What's better for your gains, the bench press or the push-up? Hello and welcome. My name's Ken and my goal is to unite different YouTube niches into one channel and hopes to inspire you to learn something new. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the chest, the pectoralis major. I'm going to be discussing the anatomy, the functionality, and then we're going to converge into what is better, the bench or the push-up. Let's begin. So, in order to understand why we pick certain exercises in our training programs, I highly encourage you to first figure out how the muscle works and why it works. So the anatomy and the function. So let's talk about origin and insertion of the pectoralis major. So origin, think of it as the anchor point of the muscle tissue. As for the insertion, think of it as it's too early for this. Think of it as the place where it latches onto to facilitate muscular movement. In the case for the pectoralis major, its origin lies in the anterior surface of the medial half of the clavicle, so this whole area where I'm circling, the anterior surface of the sternum, the 7 costal cartilages, and the sternal end of the 6th rib. So we have 10 costal cartilages. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it encompasses a large portion of your torso, of the origin of the pec major. The sternal end of the 6th rib, so you count your ribs down, right here. And the aponeurosis of the external oblique of the anterior abdominal wall. Aponeurosis, if you don't know already, is that thin sheath of connective tissue, and that's layered upon the external oblique. The external oblique and the internal oblique, they facilitate rotational movement of the transverse plane. Fancy way to say twisty twist. The differences between the external oblique and the internal oblique are that the external oblique is working on the opposite side of where you twist, and the internal oblique is working on the same side of where you twist. So if I'm twisting towards the right, my left external oblique is being worked on, and then my right internal oblique, is being worked on. Think of it as this way. External, meaning your ex. Don't think of your ex, but if you were to, she's behind you. She's on the opposite side of where you're going. You're leaving her in the dust, or him. So opposite side. Internal oblique, think of it as I want to be in her. In order for me to be in her, we need to be on the same bed. So same bed, same size, same side, internal oblique, in you. In order for me to be in you, I need to be... I'm blanking out. But I swear to God, it was a very good analogy. So that's why I don't teach at the collegiate level anymore. Cool. So once we got that out of the way, external oblique of the anterior abdominal wall, that's a fancy way. Anterior abdominal wall, that's literally saying in the front. Anterior, the front of the body. The front most part of the abdominal wall. And the external oblique is on top of the internal oblique. I will stop with the innuendos. Next up is the function of the pec major. Couple of different functions, 3 of them, well, classified with subdivisions. You have flexion of the glenohumeral joint, which is a fancy way to say shoulder. Here, let me do this real quick for you. Yeah, flexion, which is meaning raising the arm up. For the Reich. You have adduction, meaning towards the middle of the body. And medial rotation, meaning rotating this whole entire shoulder or arm inwards. So this is medial rotation. This is external rotation. So we are in peak form for the bench press and the push-up. Does that make sense? Next, we have the clavicular head, which causes flexion of the extended arm. So right here, causes flexion. And the sternoclavicular head, which is this area, causing extension of the flexed arm. Right, so it pulls that muscle inwards. That's why another popular exercise to build your pecs, your chest, are chest flies. Same idea. Why do you think I wanted to talk about the anatomy and function of the chest? Well, again, this channel is literally all about educating you so you could be the best version that you can possibly be. And I want you to be very independent thinkers that are able to pull and siphon through the bullshit that's out there to make your own hypothetical decision and choices. So that's why I really push the anatomy and function of this muscle, because who doesn't want a nice chest? So with that out of the way, let's get started and let's delve. Is it dwell or delve? We're gonna look this up together. Dwell or delve? Join me. Delve. I fucking knew it was something like that. Delve. We're gonna delve into the literature. Reach inside a receptacle and search for something. She delved in her pocket. Rummage. Cool. Yeah, education. We're learning. Alright, let's get into the video. Let's get into the article. As always, for all of these research articles, it's all free. I am a big proponent of free information to educate and facilitate growth within yourself. So this information's out there on pubmed.gov. You can look up the whole article on your own. In today's video, I'm going to be going through it. It's a lot of information. I'm going to try to keep everything as succinct and tight as possible because I know you're most likely at a university or college or school. You don't need more wizardry and jargon. Let's make this easy for you. You can read the abstract on your own. You could read the highlights on your own. If you could actually see it, this should be better. But I want to talk about the some of the stuff in here. So intensity, this is the introduction. The intensity is cardinal in training progressions, and high intensities are recommended to maximize muscular strength gains in advanced lifters. Meaning, if you are beginner to intermediate, you could actually make some very good gains and not even have to push near your max. You could just do it, and you'll get, so they call it newbie gains in the community. You just do something, and you're going to get better. That's fucking nuts. Performing push-ups with body weight only is unlikely to provide sufficient training stimulus in advanced trainees. I beg to differ. I think that if you do single arm push-ups for reps and sets, I think you can build an immaculate chest. I think this double-handed or normal push-up is a great foundation for it. I think if you could do inverted push-ups, so handstand push-ups, I think that's a brilliant way to build up your chest, or more so your shoulders, your anterior deltoids. It even works chest to some extent. You just got to angle yourself appropriately. In this article, they looked at elastic resistance. So they grabbed an elastic band, behind their back. Their hands are anchoring the bands in towards the floor, and that is providing the resistance adequate enough to facilitate crazy gains. It's nuts. So if you haven't done that already, I invite you, go on Amazon or anywhere. I'm not going to make an affiliate link. You can do this on your own. And tie that band around you or put it around you and lift yourself off, and you will get crazy, crazy gains. The way they gauged exercise intensity was through electromyography. So they attach a bunch of different electrodes to you, and it shoots out a electrical reading. We call it MVIC, muscular voluntary isometric contraction. This is the gold standard in training and how we gauge performance, muscular performance, electromyography. So I'm going to just quickly go through this so that way you don't have to read anything and it makes it easier for me to. So the sample size was 30. They had a control group, a bench press group, and a push-up group. They were familiarized with the protocol. They did a 1 rep max bench assessment, and then they split the people into a 6 rep max and a 6 rep max for the push-up and bench press. After that, that was counterbalanced, meaning one group would do it one way, and then that same group would do it the other way. So it helps to cover all bases in a research, in the research paradigm. The second part of the study was a randomized controlled trial. So they were split into a 6 rep max bench press group, a 6 rep max push-up group, and a control group that literally did nothing. After 5 weeks of training twice a week, they all came together to do, again, that 1 rep max run, my fucking Asian's coming out. The 1 rep max bench press assessment and the 6 rep max bench press assessment. Yeah, we talked about this. The question, the theoretical question, the theoretical question was, do two biomechanically comparable exercises, the push-up, the bench press, performed at the same relative intensity as defined by relative EMG amplitude result in similar strength gains? So this is what I invite you to understand is push-ups alone won't make the bench press on the same level. You need to make the intensity very similar to the intensity of the free weight of the bench press. If you do not, so if you do 50 to 100 reps of push-ups, it's not going to necessarily cause the same type of gains versus a 6 rep max bench press. So the intensity needs to be hard for the push-up for you to see the similar gains. If there was one takeaway, it would be that. The study looked at very young people, so college-age individuals, 22 men and 8 women. We talked about this. Oh, what we didn't talk about was the time of day of training. So I will cover this later on, but the time of day of which you train absolutely influences your muscular power output. How much can you push or do? And that is also governed by the time of day, which can also be modulated. A lot of information out there, but we're not going to get into that in this video. They try to keep everything normalized. So no food, no drinks, no stimulus, no physical activity prior to the session. They did a little bit of warm-up. Their bench press was on the Smith machine. The reason why they do on the Smith machine versus your traditional free weight bench, all right, your open chained exercise, is it helps normalize the bar path, and it helps keep everything, again, a little bit more repeatable and measurable. 3 to 5 attempts were used to avoid fatigue. They rested. Cool. The elbow was flexed at 90 and the shoulder abducted to 45 degrees. So for both bench and push-up, they were in this position. And the shoulder was brought down 45 degrees in this position. This is the safest way to bench. It's not out here. You do it out here, more than likely, it's going to lead to shoulder impingement. By abducting your shoulders to 45 degrees, you're putting your scapula, that back muscle, into such a position where it takes a little bit less range of motion to complete a certain shoulder action, a certain glenohumeral joint action. You'll feel it, so try that out. You're going to feel a lot more stable and a lot more safe when you bench or do your push-up if you bring it from 90 degrees to 45. Subject characteristics. Janda. The janda was male, their janda was female. Again, they were young. They were tall-ish. Not too fat. Actually, not too fat at all. It's pretty good. Must be nice. And their acromial distance was 4. I'm assuming this is in centimeters. It has to be. Probably helps if I change the image. Biacromial distance is a fancy way to say shoulder width. So you have your clavicle, and then you have your acromion, clavicle acromion. So the acromion is on the distal part of your clavicle, and then they measured that. So like your wingspan, so to speak. Just thought I'd give you some clarification. This is the image of, this is how they actually did it. So there are a bunch of the electrodes connected to their EMG device, and it shot out readings as they did the exercise. This man anchored his band with his arms, and it goes across the back and boom. Very cool stuff. Both the testing was done with 10 minutes of rest with a ratio of 2:2. So they descended for 2 seconds and they ascended for 2 seconds. But those are the tests, not the actual exercise sessions. So that is to kind of facilitate like decreased fatigability, resting 10 minutes. Their 6 rep max were determined in 3 to 5 attempts. So pretty much they didn't just do it once, they did it often to make sure that the readings were accurate. Their rep maxes were accurate. We talked about this, the frequency, how often they performed the exercises, twice a week for 5 weeks. And here's the volume, 5 sets to 6 reps with the same load resistance that was used to reach the 6 rep max during the session. And it was maintained throughout the whole entire study. So if you were to push, let's say 250 pounds of bench for your first time into the study, they kept that 250 throughout the whole entire training paradigm, the whole entire program. They didn't change it. They rested 4 minutes, and they maintained this 4-minute rest throughout the whole training period, so you don't get tired as fuck. That's pretty much what it's saying. The electromyography signals of the exercises were analyzed by taking the average of the entire 6 reps. So again, when you're doing these, you want the average because that is the data you want. We're going to be comparing table 3 and table 4. This is looking at the 6 rep max of both protocols, the bench and the push-up. And this is the 1 rep max of bench and push-up. What we see is very similar gains from pre-test to post-test, from the push-up and the bench. So the triangle is change. They looked at percent change. The percent change for both the push-up and the bench press increased statistically significantly. So there was a statistic significance improvement in both exercises with a p-value of 0.001. And they, again, it's very similar percent change they saw a big change, which means that there is significance of protocol. So you would think that the bench press would see the bigger change, which, I mean, arguably yes, but not to a significant extent. Okay. All right, so the results, if there was one thing to take from this whole entire video, it'd be this. EMG values showed no significant difference between the 6-rep max bench press and the 6-rep max push-up. Yes, they saw a difference. They saw a bigger difference in the bench press, but it wasn't a crazy, like a stark night and day difference. So you can still get beautiful gains by doing a push-up that has the intensity relatively matching the bench press. It was a lot of information, I know. This is a long video. It's over 20 minutes. But let's make a closing thoughts, closing remarks, and let's recap. If you have excuses, you don't have any excuses anymore. You can get amazing gains by just doing push-ups versus going to the gym and lifting heavy weight. In order for you to match those weights in terms of gains, the resistance that you do at home need to be equivalent or relatively equivalent to the weight. Meaning, intensity needs to be high. If the intensity isn't high, the gains may not be there. Your gains are also predicated on how much you do. We call this exercise volume in the scientific space. Exercise volume. If your volume is low, you're not going to see crazy gains. So the more gains you want, the more volume you need to do. Here is another invaluable piece of information when it comes to changing your body composition, gaining more muscle tissue. For your body to change, there needs to be an exercise stimulus and an exercise response adaptation. That exercise stimulus could be modulated, changed however you want. You could do bench, push-ups, a lot of volume, low volume, heavy weight, low weight, frequency, how many times a week, all these fun different variables. Your exercise response and adaptation is what you do for your body and what your body does to grow or not grow. This is modulated through protein intake, fat intake to satiate hormone levels, sleep, stress. Those are like the main factors that influence how well your body adapts. And also protein intake and timing. That's important too. You can't eat too much protein in one sitting because you're going to urinate it out as uric acid and it gets excreted as waste, or you convert protein into energy through gluconeogenesis. What we see in the growing evidence of research is 30 to 50 grams of protein per meal. Depending upon your training level and status, 30 to 50 grams of protein per meal, spaced between 2 to 4 hours. If you eat more, you're wasting it. If you eat less, that's okay. But this is like picture perfect 30 to 50 grams. It could even be 20 to 50 grams. There's outliers for everything. Okay, so try to aim for at least 30 grams of protein every meal if you want to get gains like crazy. So you play with these factors, it's going to lead to better gains. This whole video was about gains. So if I shed the light on anything here, I really invite you to subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know. If you have any questions below, I know that it was just a bombardment of information, but I did my best to really make it as digestible as possible for you. But let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or any confusion. I'll be able to clear that up right away. As always, for more fitness-related content, here's an invitation to subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon.